The fact that I was able to just tap away on my iPad for like 2 or 3 days and then end up with this physically in my hands is still mind-blowing to me. Might be my new favorite way to make models. So today's project is kind of a special one because I have once again been tasked to take something from a video game and recreate it in the real world using the technology of 3D printing. And today the world that we're going to be recreating something from is from a brand new game called Town of Zaz, who so happened to also be the sponsor of today's video. And this is the first time that a team has specifically reached out to me to ask if I would recreate something from their game. Like, Studio Pixino is an indie game studio and they are trusting me with their work, and I don't want to let them down. I want to do a good job. I want to do it justice. So while I am kind of nervous about like that part of this, I am really excited to recreate something from this world because Town of Zaz is a food-themed action RPG game with the most adorable art style. All the world and character designs that I've seen from this game have been so stinking cute. Now, here's the problem though. Even though I've made 3D prints from games before, those have all been made taking the base model directly from the game. This time, however, I don't have that. Like, of course, they've been great and sent over a bunch of different reference images for me to use and help me out, but I am going to have to make this 3D model from scratch. And then, for some reason, on top of that, I decided that this project would be the perfect opportunity for me to learn a whole new program that I've not used before. Yeah, I know, fantastic decision making on my part, truly. So to make this whole model, I decided I'm going to use a program called Nomad Sculpt, which is a 3D sculpting app on the iPad. Now, while I do have just a smidge of experience with 3D sculpting, that has mostly been in Blender just to add little tiny details. Definitely not make the entire model. But I feel like if I can get the hang of it, that this is going to be the best tool to help me capture and recreate the art style of this game. Okay, so here's the plan on how I'm going to tackle this. Instead of starting off with the big main focus of this project, I'm instead going to choose something small and simpler to recreate and practice sculpting. Get a chance to learn the tools without getting too overwhelmed. And while I was like looking at all the art for the Town of Zaz, I noticed this absolutely adorable avocado cat looking thing. And I just thought little avocado cat would be the perfect starter project.
Even though you do have to fight these guys in order to hunt and gather ingredients for cooking tasty meals, arguably they are still very adorable.
Look at it, round, friend-shaped. How hard could it be? So yeah, my first ever sculpt is going to be this little avocado cat, and then we will see where we go from there.
Now, even though I'm new to sculpting, the basics of 3D modeling still remain the same as if I was starting on Blender. And that's to take the object that I'm trying to make and break it down into its most basic shapes and then build it up from there. Like, starting off easy, the head is a sphere, and then we add another one for the snout. And then the neck avocado, which is a totally normal sentence for me to be saying, is also another sphere, but then just squished down and then flattened on the top. Now, moving on to the ears, you might be looking at them and going, hey, that's probably like a triangle or cone or something, right? Wrong. It's pointy spheres. Don't be fooled, it's all spheres. We're just going to drag them out to make them look a little bit more pointy and also fold in on themselves. For sculpting the initial shapes, I was pretty much only using the move tool, but once I had everything in place, that's when I started playing around with the clay and brush tool to add some detail. I'm mostly basing this off of the 2D reference, which means I need to give them the same angry cartoon eyebrows. While it's good to get the base of your shape and proportions down first, it's also smart to wait to add details because when you do that, you have to increase the poly count of the mesh. I will say, I was very surprised with how well Nomad Sculpt was able to handle these high resolution meshes, as well as the tools that they had in place of being able to very quickly remesh or lower the mesh count, and all this very quickly on an iPad when sometimes Blender just struggles with this, if I'm being honest. With the head looking good, it's time to move on to the body, which means, yes, yet another sphere. I decided to keep the pose pretty simple by just having him sit down. That way you just need the main body, some tubes for arms, and that's pretty much what a cat is. And of course for the paws, 4 more spheres. I think I've said spheres so much that I'm just saying spears now instead. Neither sound like real words. And then for the tail, I ended up finding a tool that you can just draw tubes with. So that worked out perfectly. And lastly, it looks like the back of their tail has some sort of fruit on it, so I added that as well. I assume it is also another avocado, but I cannot say for certain. And after a few hours, I now have my first finished sculpt.
For the most part, it's flipping around. Overall, I'm pretty happy with this. Like I said, I've done like a tiny bit of 3D sculpting before, but this was the first time like actually using a stylus to do it, and it made it feel so much more intuitive while working with it. I mostly just used the basic tools. There's more tools in here that I just didn't even touch, and I was able to accomplish this, so that's a good sign. And of course, the second test was like, okay, here's my reference. Am I able to recreate that in this 3D space to look semi-similar? Which, for the most part, I think I did a decent job at. I mean, does it border the line between cartoon cat and angry chihuahua? Yes, but that is a result I can live with. So that gives me the confidence I can now do the same thing, but just on the larger scale with the full scene. But also, just to make sure, I am going to combine this and export it as an STL and send it off to the slicer and have it 3D printed, just to make sure that it works. Like, it's a 3D object, I feel like it's going to be fine, but you know, can never be too careful. That way, if there are any issues I find from exporting from this, do it now rather than making an entire scene and then realize there's a problem later.
But after a few hours of printing and a quick clean and curing, our test avocado freeline friend was a success. I was happy to see also a lot of the detail that I added in was still there, even at the smaller scale, so that is good to know. But yay, first sculpted 3D print. Woo. Cool, now it's time to do all that over again, but way more. So for this project, they asked if I could recreate something from the marketplace. And they gave me a bunch of screenshots to look at and for me to choose from. And I immediately knew, as soon as I saw this glorious bread truck, I knew I had to make bread truck. Look at it, it's a truck that sells bread, but also looks like it's made of bread. Look at that cute sign. This cute little mascot just having a fantastic time. And they said, say no more, here's more photos of bread truck. Now the only thing left to do is actually get started sculpting. And decided to take advantage of one of the biggest pros of Nomad Sculpt being on the iPad, and actually, you know, leave my house for working on this. Which is definitely a plus, because normally when I'm working on Blender, I need to be on my desktop. So the fact that I can just throw my iPad in my bag when it's a nice day and I want to work outside, definitely a really big plus. I was pretty confident going into this because how well the test went, and then was immediately humbled because it took me like an hour just to get the shape of the roof right, because I kept on having to like restart because I couldn't figure out how to form the shape that I was looking at. I found myself wishing that I could just grab vertices instead of having to like move stuff around. Like something as simple as like a slightly tapered box. In Blender, I would just need to grab and scale one of the faces, while here I have to like carefully move the corners to give it the right shape. While touch control is definitely great for working with organics, when it comes to just moving geometry, it can be a little frustrating. Like the hood of the truck was something I struggled with for a while because it's like kind of a rectangle, but part of it's flat, but there's a curve here. Oh, but I have to add more geometry, but now it's not looking smooth, it looks lumpy. How do I clean this up? I don't know. Definitely one of the pieces where I just kind of had to keep on switching between tools in hopes that it would get there eventually, which I think it did. I do have to keep in mind that at this part of the sculpt, it's going to still look a little bit weird because I'm mostly just focusing on the face shapes, and without any of the detail, it probably just doesn't look right. It was around here that I started to learn about using the trim and mask tool to start building the shapes, which was definitely a welcome improvement than just trying to grab everything. But also sometimes it would go the other way, like making these jars with the little lattice tool, I think it's called. That was really easy. Now, obviously I chose Nomad Sculpt for this project, but I am curious of what other people's preferences are for sculpting programs, and not even specifically only to iPad. Like, I know that there's a few out there for iPad, like including ZBrush as well, which I'm pretty sure is like the standard. And then I also saw like a bunch of just free modeling programs as well. I personally decided to go with Nomad because it seemed like the best middle ground, and especially for the price of it. The app was $20, I believe it was, which for a one-time payment for a program is really good in my opinion, compared to like ZBrush, where I think it might be $20 per month just to use. Which, I don't know, maybe it's more powerful, more tools, but also at the same time that made me not want to get it because I didn't want to get overwhelmed as I have every other time I've tried to use ZBrush. So let me know in the comments if anyone has any other suggestions for sculpting programs. I just feel like Nomad's a pretty good middle ground, where it's simple and intuitive, but it's powerful enough to do everything I needed to do. It's funny, I really didn't realize at first just like how many shapes was in this one truck, but it felt like it just kept on going on and on and on. But after 2 days, finally, all the base shapes are there. And now I can start doing the fun stuff of adding detail. And while I'm pretty happy with my progress so far, I think this is the part where it's going to start adding depth and dimension to make it look really cool. Also, at this point, as you can see, I actually do now have the official 3D model directly from the game of this food truck, which was definitely really nice of them. And technically at this point, I could have pivoted and just used the original model and probably still saved a good amount of time. But I had already committed so much to this sculpting narrative that I wanted to see it through. So yeah, a little bit of sunk cost fallacy there, but it ended up working out fine. And after a few hours of adding detail later, bread truck is finally ready. And while some of these details maybe could have been like painted on later, I think having the depth in there really does help it and makes it look absolutely adorable. Maybe I can combine this together into 2 different pieces and send it off to the slicer to then be 3D printed. So while that did complete the original goal, after seeing the food truck by itself, I kind of thought it needed a little bit more. So I decided to go on a little side quest and actually sculpt the little food stand that's also behind it. Mostly to kind of fill out the scene, but also I wanted to sculpt some tiny food, if I'm being honest. I will say, this one went a lot quicker, and I don't know if that's because I didn't have as much as a reference, so I was more loose with it, or maybe now I'm just incredibly goated at Nomad Sculpt. Who can say? Or, you know, maybe it was the help from my supervisor. Okay. Anywho's, the timing ended up working out great because the other print was done and I could send this one off to print next. And now I can look and see how my bread print has turned out. Yes, all the details are still intact and it looks so cute. The amount of detail that you can get from resin printing just makes it worth having to go through all the extra steps of cleaning it. It does look like there was a little bit of splitting that made a gap here, but that's something that can be fixed later. And this one also came out adorable. I am so happy right now because this came out so stinking adorable. Like the little cartoon proportions of it and the little tiny food. Something that I am particularly proud of, fits like a glove. No seam gap here. I have made an embarrassing amount of resin prints that were supposed to fit together and that just did not, so I am quite happy with this. The fact that it's like not even painted yet and it already looks so close to just being like taken from the game. But low-key, after this, Nomad Sculpt might be my new favorite way to make models. Like being able to get the organic cartoonish shapes just right while also still being able to go in and add so much little tiny detail. And then also combining it and prepping it for 3D print normally takes me so long in Blender, but it was really, really easy in Nomad. And it's going to look even cuter once we actually paint it. But before we do that, obviously I have to fix this little gap in the side of the roof here, and also sand down where there are some minimal layer lines and also where the supports were. But after that, painting time. To fix the gap, it's actually pretty simple. I'm just going to take a little bit of spackle. And might I just say, this jar is pretty high up there on forbidden snacks because this looks like the most delicious marshmallow fluff you've ever seen, but you can't eat. Well, at least I can use it for its intended purpose of filling in this gap, which I do by just slowly pressing it in as close to the form as I can. After waiting the instructed amount of time for it to set, I take an old brush and a little bit of extra resin and slowly start applying it over the spackle. Then I just take my little UV flashlight and cure the new layer of resin. And repeat until everything is covered so it will all be the same texture. Also, yes, I know, I'm currently working with UV resin in front of a very sunny window, which, believe me, I know is not the best idea. By my defense, I was already planning on curing it in like 5 seconds anyway, and I needed good lighting for this shot. Then after doing a little bit of off-camera sanding, it is looking pretty hidden. Again, not completely perfect, but once it is painted, it's going to be a lot less noticeable. Which, speaking of painting, it's time for priming. Now, the paint that I'm going to be using is going to be Pro Acryl. Okay, that was upside down. Now, if I wanted the paint to be as smooth as possible, I would use an airbrush, but since the textures in the game kind of look hand-painted anyway, I think it would be silly not to use a brush. It's free brush strokes included, meaning that this is a stylized choice and not me just deciding I don't want to deal with the airbrush. And the good thing about this print is because I already put the details in the original sculpt, now it's just time for the tedious yet satisfying task of painting by numbers. So enjoy a little montage of super fast paint mode. In the window, and to do that I traced it out real easy. Then I have a lid from a Panera salad, I believe it is, and then cut out these little plastic piece that pretty roughly is the shape of the window. Which honestly is a pretty cool effect considering it's just super glue and some plastic. For a moment, I was genuinely so pleased with this paint job that I convinced myself the project was over and forgot I had another mini to paint. Well, cue back the montage music. It's so funny how miniatures take so long to paint even though there's so little surface area. Like, all the little tiny details normally always take so long, but it adds so much to the end of it. And I think it is finally time for some well-deserved beauty shots of the final print. Ridiculously happy with how this final print came out. Like, the overall print quality, the actual paint job itself came out so clean. And as a bonus, I got to learn a new skill for making this model from scratch, and that's really cool. I'm actually really proud of that. Though it did help that the art style I was basing this on was already incredibly well done from the get-go. So if you like the style of bread truck as much as I did, you can check out more about the game Town of Oz and add it to your wish list on Steam and many other platforms. And if you made it this far in the video, you'll probably like some of my other videos where I do 3D printing and other silly crafting stuff, so you go ahead and check that out as well. As always, I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see y'all in the next one. Bye!